Competitive video gaming. It was once a novelty. Now it's a $1 billion a year industry. Players compete on teams and leagues just like any other professional sport. But you could play a video game everywhere, right? So it's just a virtual industry. Not so fast. Our guest today is Henry D'Esposito. He's going to break down the many ways that esports uses real estate and how that real estate demand, it might just grow in the future. Plus, we're talking about New York retail rents. They are up and vacancy may be down a little bit. The big question we're going to talk about is that trend going to continue? All of that and just a little bit more right now on everything we know about retail. Hello, my name is James Cook. I'm coming to you live from Indiana. The last video game that I played was Wordle last night on my phone. Ebere Anokute is in New York City.
Absolutely. And the last video game that I played was Angry Birds, also on my phone.
Oh, I'm noticing a trend here. And Taylor Coyne is in Los Angeles.
Bucking the trend, the last video game I played was Super Mario 3D with my nephews. Side note, highly recommend.
I bet they kicked your butt, right?
No. I'm very good.
Oh, good for you. When I play video games with my nephews, they kill me. Well, guys, this is everything you know, everything we know about retail. This is where we tell all of you everything we know about retail, and we do it 3 things at a time. Taylor, what do you know about retail?
The first thing that I know about retail is that we have got a guest to talk about esports and retail.
Woo!
Hello. Welcome, Henry.
Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Taylor. Thanks, James.
All right. So today we are joined by Henry, a fellow JLLer, to talk about esports. Last year, he authored a JLL research report about 2021 esports and real estate to understand esports, why real estate matters for a virtual industry. So again, welcome, Henry. We're going to, jump right into it. So my baseline understanding of esports, right? It is a competitive video game, or I should say it's competitive video gaming. You can be really good and play competitively where thousands of people watch, or you can play with your friends. And it kind of stops there. So tell us more. It sounds like there are these different levels. How does this all relate to real estate? What kind of real estate needs do they have? Because again, we are a real estate company.
That's right. I think the easiest way for people to think about esports is really everyone has a conceptual understanding of what professional sports leagues are like. So you have players, you have teams, you have owners, you have stadiums, you have leagues, and you have fans who go in person if they can, who watch online, who read news articles, who follow their favorite players and their favorite teams. So it's really that exact same structure. It's just rather than having people in person playing baseball or football or what have you, it's people playing video games essentially. But it's not just sitting at home playing a video game on your own on your couch necessarily. It's this kind of collaborative, competitive environment. So it has all the hallmarks of a professional sports team. It's just online. They use all the same types of real estate that professional sports teams do. So the biggest one, that kind of the highest profile, is going to be venues. There are a number of 10,000 plus seats esports venues out there. Many of them are more in like the 1 to 10,000 seat kind of smaller arena that you might think of. And they're used for really pre-pandemic, used for big in-person events. So you can get 100 people on the same stage. While you can play esports virtually, you can also sit on a stage together. Everyone has their own gaming setup there. And then fans can watch the players in person and also kind of watch on the big screen to see what's happening. And there's a ton of energy and excitement from fans who like to go there. It's the same reason that it's more fun to watch sports in person. And the same reason why, like early pandemic, when football was happening without any fans, everyone was like, this is kind of a weird thing to watch on TV. That's the magic that having people in a stadium really brings.
I really actually appreciated when professional sports brought in the fake cheering. It changed my watching of sports. I felt like it did it really did make a difference. So that's my one little, I agree.
Yeah,
I think it does make a
right? And
difference.
so if you're watching people like basically the equivalent of being on Zoom playing video games, it's not quite as exciting as if they're in together and then there's lots of fans and you cut to people cheering and exciting and crying and praying, and all that stuff really adds to the excitement of the game and the value of the industry. So that's venues. That's one big piece of it. The next kind of moving down the chain is more of an emerging area where these teams, because they're becoming more official, they're more structured, there are real leagues, there are kind of support for the players, and player salaries are going up. Teams actually have training facilities now. So there's a headquarters for the team, for the league. Players can go and practice together. They can get a lot of the sort of health and wellness benefits that are typical in high-end offices. So, healthy food, some light medical services, stretching, gyms, all that kind of support, or similar to what you'd find in a lot of professional team locker rooms. That same thing, because although it's not as physical, you are kind of sitting in a chair all the time, and a lot of the same problems that office workers have, that applies to esports players. And if they have a sore elbow, they can't play, and it matters as much as it does for an NFL player, right?
Yeah,
so there's that's existing.
I did read one time, it was like one of the highest paid esports players like had to retire at 22 or something like that because of so much hand damage. So,
Right.
Again, all of these analogies to professional sports players, I think does really help wrap your head around, an industry that a lot of us are unfamiliar with.
Exactly. Yeah,
so I get the locker room, I get the slugging, I get all of that now.
Yeah. The last piece of it is really where us as consumers or fans come in, and that's the retail element. I know this is a retail focused show, so that's where people are able to interact with other fans in sort of a esports themed bar, which again, just like a sports bar, you might have a Steelers bar in Pittsburgh, and everyone knows that that's where you go to watch them. Same thing for esports teams. Or you'd have an actual gaming center, which are not really a good metaphor to professional sports with a gaming center, but essentially you're able to go with your friends or alone, log in. They have the professional levels set up for you to use as just a player, and then you can game on your own, online, as part of one of these things, or sort of watch other people there doing it too. And that's, again, that in-person excitement and like being able to talk to people and cheer people on is a lot of reason why that is so successful.
And in your report, you talked about localhost. So that's an example of one of these esports retail gaming centers, right?
It is, yeah. And so that's one of the bigger and best known of these brands. So they're opening locations across the US. And it's really for, if you don't want to do it alone in your house or your apartment, and you don't necessarily want to invest in one of these very high, you can see the chair, the monitor, the keyboard, all that, the internet speed, all those things really matter to be competitive, because if you lose even a few fractions of a second in response time or in lag, then you're not going to do so well. So here you can go and get the top of the line everything for a pretty reasonable rate. Usually you're paying by the hour or something to use one of those spots.
Which I didn't think about, like the cost of entry. So interestingly, localhost is opening up in Five Below stores, which for all of the retail fans around here is really geared towards a younger demographic. And, I guess the owners of localhost, one, it was about courting a younger demographic, but they also made this point of equity of making it more accessible. Not everyone can afford the thousands of dollars it is for all of that gaming equipment to have in your home. So, making it just, again, accessible to lots of people, which I think is super interesting.
It is. Yeah. And it's, a lot of whatever conception you might have of esports as an industry, a lot of kids and young people really are passionate about it and excited about it, really would love, like a lot of people dream of becoming a professional esports player now. And you can make a lot of money doing it. You can be very successful. Obviously, most people don't. But if you don't have access to that sort of equipment to be able to be competitive and to learn, then probably less likely to happen.
And then going back to your bars and something you said about enthusiasm. So this is Meltdown. It sounds like it's not in the US yet. This is a French website. It sounds like it might be expanding globally. But it really just sticks out to me. Look at the enthusiasm from these people watching other people play video games. Like, look at how excited this man is.
Let's go.
So yeah, I just think this is just like a fascinating industry. And clearly, people are very excited about this and having places to go with other people. Again, it's just like this social aspect, which I think a lot of people probably don't always think about.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Which is fantastic. So now that we kind of have, again, biased on this show, thinking about, retail, but also in the other ones that you talked about, arenas and headquarters, what do you think has the strongest outlook in the future? Where is going to be, where do you see the biggest growth happening?
I think probably the biggest growth will be around these individual gaming centers, just because there's going to be so many of them. So while there's one team HQ and maybe one arena, maybe in every city, these local gaming centers are going to be much more plentiful. And the idea is to have everyone be able to, drive half an hour like any other retail location. So that'll be, my guess, there'll be hundreds of those not too far out from now. And they'll become sort of hubs for a lot of different things. And then to your point about Five Below, one of the rare things about this sort of retail is you're going to be getting people who are, 14 to 25 to 30. You're going to be getting a lot of these younger people to spend a lot of time in retail. And you're the experts, so I'll ask you, but what other better use is there to get that many young people into a retail place for that long?
That is true. For literally hours at a time, come
Right.
all young people and hang out. Put some, a burger place and a pizza place
Eat
next
and
door.
drink. Exactly.
Yeah.
You just need a big case of Monster Energy drink, nachos, pretzels. I mean, there's a lot of franchise concepts on these esports lounges. And I think one of the things that makes it so appealing is, you have to invest in technology. But then operating it really is about, you don't have to have high-end F&B or anything. I mean, these guys, they just need gamer fuel.
Yep.
Mountain Dew.
Right.
So as we know, the pandemic changed everything for everyone, but specifically, how did the pandemic impact esports?
Yeah, it's very, very, very extreme mix of impacts. So on the one hand, obviously all these in-person venues didn't happen for a long time.
Yeah.
All of the coming together and partying in a bar and retail gaming centers didn't happen. On the flip side, everyone was stuck at home and they couldn't go anywhere. So the audience for esports grew very fast, very far. A lot more people tuned in, watched, played. So the baseline of people who were interested in it went up a lot. So to me, although that hurt the real estate piece of it temporarily, once that bigger audience has the same retail and venue and team training needs, then the actual demand for this type of space, I think, is going to go up, because it's really just a relation to how many people are invested in esports and want to cheer on their team, and that's how many bars there will be and gaming centers there will be and venues there will be. So bigger audience means more real estate, which is, I think, what we're going to see in the next few years.
A fascinating industry to watch, for sure. Very quickly growing, as you said. It'll be really fascinating to see how this, continues to grow. So for all of our viewers, this is the report that Henry authored. You can find this on the JLL retail, not the retail webpage. Sorry, that's just like my slogan on the show is the JLL retail LinkedIn page. But you can go to JLL.com and search for esports, and you can learn more about all of these different real estate uses. It's a great report. And this is not going to be the last time we talk about this. So,
Before we let Henry go, I have a question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite game? I'm assuming you're a gamer to have written this report. If you're not, you're very good at fooling all of us. What's your favorite game to watch and your favorite game to play? Are they the same or different?
So I'm not a huge watcher of games, I have to say. I get why people do it. I don't do it that much, but I promise this is true. This is not a real estate plug. My favorite game is actually City Skylines, which is like a SimCity type of game. It's like building cities and urban planning and transportation and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's just similar interests is why I do that and why I do this for work. But
that game probably doesn't.
Yeah,
that game probably doesn't have a league that competes or anything like that, does it?
It doesn't, but there are actually a lot of streamers who you can watch hours of someone building a city. So if you're in the mood for that, it's out there. Everything is out there when it comes to esports.
feel like
Can I
that's
say
like the
quickly?
understatement.
For sure. Can I say quickly how interesting a phenomenon this is, especially with all the conversation in the past few, months or so about like the metaverse, right? I feel like most
Yeah.
video games are metaverses in themselves. So it's interesting that on the one hand, we see the trend going from, in person to the metaverse, but here we have a phenomenon where we're seeing, a sort of metaverse creating a demand for in-person experiences and spaces. So such a really cool phenomenon to observe and to, track. And I can't wait to see what else we see in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Henry, thank you so much again for joining us today. Again, you can find the report online.
All right, thank you all so much.
Thanks,
Have a good
Henry.
one.
Thanks,
Thank
Henry.
you. Ebere, after that great comment, what else do you know about retail?
Well, Taylor, I'm full of great comments and I know so much about retail. Here is the second thing that we know about retail. Maybe not as fun and cutting edge as esports gaming and stuff, but also, some good news. So it is a New York City retail market update. Obviously, I've been focusing on New York for the past however many years. And so here to give you all a little bit of an update on what we're seeing in the retail market in New York, right? So
Ready.
New York, very similar to other major urban centers in the country, we want nothing more than to get back to the sort of activity, deal volume, transactions that we were seeing before the pandemic, right? And this has been made very difficult. Obviously, the main reason is the pandemic, right? But because of that, the uncertainty caused by that, there was a long time where both retailers and landlords were just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. They weren't really making any actual moves because they didn't want to be the first one to do something wrong, right? And I think as a result of them not doing anything, that sort of lack of transactions made it impossible to know what the value of real estate was in certain parts of the city, which also slowed down transaction volume for a while. So it was sort of like an imperfect storm of things slowing down our transactions, right? In addition, what further compounds this is that we're waiting for the return of tourists and office workers, obviously, because those are the the main consumer base that supports retail in these central business districts, right? And we know that it's important to look at NYC and to pay attention to what's going on there, because we know New York is a bellwether of change, right? It's one of our most dense and most important cities in the country, and very often trends that we see happen in New York end up taking off other major cities throughout the country and even in the world sometimes, right? So if New York City retail is struggling and it hasn't come back yet, it's kind of hard to imagine that other cities would see substantial recovery anytime soon, right? However, the good news is, okay, let me get to the right slide, is that it looks as though leasing velocity is coming back, right? So, woo, we need sound effects. All right, where we can cheer for this. So, like I said, leasing velocity is up, right? Transaction volume, we've seen it creeping back towards normal after the historic lows of 2020, right? So, I mean, you can't see my mouse on the screen, but I'm, highlighting this little square right here where we see in 2020, deal volume was down almost 80% year over year, right? So that's what I mean when I say that there were very few transactions happening. We were seeing, not single digits, but pretty close for a couple quarters. And, it's been very, very difficult for that reason. However, in Q4 of this year, we saw that it increased almost 24% over Q3. So from Q3 to Q4, we saw deal volume go up by almost 24%, which is great, right? And it was also
big. It's great.
huge, right?
That's really big.
It's really good news, and we're very excited to see that. I think the brokers that I've worked with and talked to have been commenting about how much activity there is in the market and how much the stats and other fundamentals might not be reflecting how much is actually going on. And so to see that reflected in the deal volume finally has been really, really encouraging. We saw that this was driven by leasing from essential businesses, which comprised 56.7% of overall leasing activity, as well as some luxury tenants, which we'll talk about in more detail a little bit later. But this is the highest total of transactions that we've seen since Q1 2020 when the pandemic started, right? So very, very encouraging. I'm sure that once we look back on Q1 of 2022, we'll see that it's gone even higher than that, right? And so we haven't returned completely to normal. Deal volume, as you can see by this graph, is still down about 31% from Q4 2019. But again, we're encouraged by the way things are trending and, the conversations that we're hearing anecdotally about activity in the city. So that is very, very encouraging. And speaking of luxury tenants, I'm going to skip that slide. We know that luxury tenants are continuing to smell opportunity, especially in New York City, right? So I feel like I've said I've said the anecdote about the profile of jobs lost during this recession versus previous recessions, and how that has favored high income office using employees, and as a result they have been able to take that stability and use that money towards some of these luxury purchases and items that they love so much. So we see here in the graph just an example of some of the luxury leases that we've seen signed over the past year. And I mean, these are some names we all have heard of, right? Chanel, Valentino, Gucci. The most recent one that we saw was from Kitan, which actually went to Madison Avenue, which historically has been a luxury destination in the city. But I would say in the last 3-4 years or so, foot traffic has been down a lot in that area of the city. And so as a result, we've seen a lot of the same tenants that might have gone there go to Soho, which this table also represents. Soho is the clear winner when it comes to, this sort of luxury race, but very interesting to see them go to Madison Avenue. And it does make sense in some ways because the store formats up there are pretty right size for tenant demand nowadays. So it's, interesting choice, but not the most surprising. But again, FP Journe, a luxury watchmaker, went to Soho, over 6,000 square feet that they signed in Q4 of 2021. So we're seeing, leasing activity pick up, especially from these luxury retailers. And, although when it comes to some of the other fundamentals like rent and availability, those are still not doing as well as we would have liked. We just think that means that the time is ripe for, some more retailers to come in and lease prime space at a discount. So that leads me to my question for both of you. What categories do you think are going to come and lease up all of this available space in 2022? Do you think that the luxury retailers are going to continue to expand, or can you envision any other sort of category, uptaking in leasing activity this year?
Specifically talking about Manhattan now?
Sure.
Okay. I see some growth from luxury, kind of slow and steady. I see some new digital native brands looking to open their first physical stores.
Athleisure, home furnishings.
Right. And
the
then
D2C athleisure and home furnishings specifically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then we're talking about Manhattan. So restaurants.
Yeah.
And then also the sort of mainstream, almost what you would historically call mall-based retail that, now finds it important especially when the tourists return, to have, a good, if not flagship, like a nice, large sort of destination location in the city as well. That'll definitely be part of it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well, especially, that sort of retailer that you mentioned, James, would probably go to like a Times Square sort of area, I can envision. And they have seen a lot of activity, like you said as well, from food users in the past couple quarters as well. So I could definitely see that too. One that I might add would be maybe some more grocery fulfillment services. I think that just based on their business model and the stores, being dark and them being able to fulfill so many orders so fast, I don't think that they've reached the ceiling of, how they're able to grow within the city. So I can imagine seeing a lot more of those proliferate throughout Manhattan and, the outer boroughs as well. So we will continue to pay close attention to this. But again, we are very encouraged by the signs that we're seeing. And so with that, James, tell me, what do you know about retail?
Well, Ebere, here's the third thing that we know about retail. We got more news about physical retail from Amazon. Don't know if you've heard of it. They're a large, mostly online global retail company. They also do some other things as well. At any rate, Amazon has really demonstrated a strong desire to take on physical retail. Amazon has been historically very strong online, but has sort of, to a certain extent, seen its retail sales plateau at a certain point, because there's just some stuff people want to buy in person. And so Amazon is doing a lot of different experiments in order to overcome those hurdles and be successful in physical real estate at all. So last week we talked about the combo Starbucks pickup and Amazon Go store. Let's talk a little bit more about what's new with Amazon Go. Amazon Go is it's a cashier-free convenience store that you have to use an app to shop in, but it's historically been in the city. Like the first location opened in Seattle in 2018. They're in New York, San Francisco, all urban locations. Right now, not a lot of people in the urbans. They're mostly in the suburban areas. So Amazon has said we're going to start doing suburban Amazon Go locations. So their first location is going to be in suburban Seattle. It's going to be opening in the next few months. It's larger than those other urban Amazon Goes. You know, the urban ones would be like, I don't know, 1 to 2,000 square feet. This one is the building itself is over 6,000 square feet, but the shop space is going to be closer to 3,000 square feet. So it's larger, it's got more stuff, but it's still Amazon Go, which means you have to have an app in order to get into it and an app to pay for everything. The benefit is you don't have to wait in line for a cashier. You just walk out the store and they charge your Amazon account. So two new announcements from Amazon in physical retail. That was the first one. The second one is something called Amazon Style that's coming to the Americana at Brand in Glendale, California. This is men's and women's clothing, shoes, and accessories. It's about 30,000 square feet, which is the size of like your Old Navy, a little bit bigger than that. Not a ton of clothing sitting out. There's one piece of each clothing. Then you'll scan it. Again, you have to have the app, and it'll show you what sizes and styles are available. And you say, okay, I want to try that on. Everything you say you want to try on, it sends it. Well, it doesn't send it. An employee takes it to a locker in a room for Serena to go and try out. When you're in the fitting room, you've got a touch screen. So if you want to get more stuff brought to the fitting room, you always can. There's artificial intelligence that fuels a recommendation engine that changes on the fly. So as you're trying on clothes, it'll say, oh, well, maybe you'd like to try on this as well. And then when you check out, one of the options, again, we talked about this last week, is at Amazon Style, you can use the new Amazon One, which is tied to your palm print. So you don't even need to have, well, you have to have an app in order to shop, but you don't have to have an app to pay if you've got your credit card tied to your palm print. So guys, I bet you didn't know this, but I didn't realize Amazon already sells 10% of all the clothing that's sold in the United States.
Wait, what?
I believe that. I've heard so much about Amazon fashion over the past like 2 years or so. That doesn't even surprise me.
And it's mostly about the basics. You know, it's not necessarily like something you've got to try on, but it's that pair of pants you already know, the pair of shoes that you know exactly what size and style you like, and you're just getting them shipped to you. So 10% for Amazon. They think we can do more. So let's open up some physical stores. Taylor, you're our LA-based correspondent. So once it opens at the Americana at Brand, we're going to be sending you to check it out. As viewers may know, Americana is one of the top centers in the world in terms of productivity. It does very well. It's an outdoor lifestyle center. Amazon is going to be next to H&M, across from Cheesecake Factory. So, you know, while you're waiting for your seat at Cheesecake, and you can go shop there. And as you can see, it's right down the street from another Amazon physical concept, Amazon 4-Star. So a lot of opportunities to do all of your Amazon shopping in one place.
They're taking the former Forever 21 space.
It's on the corner next to H&M. It's the corner of Americana Way, and I forget what's the north-south street. I'm blanking on what that is. But yeah, that makes sense.
I'm pretty sure, which is really interesting because the Forever 21, the footprint was bigger. It was a lot bigger than some of the other, I don't want to call it it's a lifestyle center, so it doesn't have a typical anchor, but it was a big store. And they moved out whenever Forever 21 was closing all of their stores. And I was very curious on who was going to take such a big space. And it just occurred to me when you said it across the street from the Cheesecake Factory. And I was like, yes. But which is also smart. That is the corner that you cross the street and you get to the Galleria. So I also think that that's a great spot for that store in particular, that is close to the Galleria. So you'll get a lot of that traffic as well.
Yeah, the cross shop is fantastic between the Galleria and the Americana. Yep. And if you're the one that's right there, you go park at the Galleria, do some shopping there, then run across the street and check out the new Amazon clothing store.
Oh, you
Definitely.
always want to park at the Americana. You don't want to park at the Galleria, but that's a topic for another day.
Pro tip.
Now,
pro
I've
tip.
heard people say the exact opposite, because you can park for free at the Galleria, right?
Yes, but the Galleria.
I like this interplay we have here. Let's see.
Strongly disagree, but a topic for another day, and it depends on how strongly you feel about parking garages and their design, which I weirdly
Feel strongly about.
I have feelings.
Taylor has opinions on parking garages. Yeah, we've talked about this before. We should just do a whole episode on parking. Why don't we? Let's do a whole episode on retail parking.
We actually should, just because there's so much, like the future of a lot of developers aren't building parking lots the same way because they will eventually be converted into something that's not parking, which, it sounds really boring, but it's not. We spend so much time trying to find parking spots. You generally hate parking lots. They're not great, but you can design them to be much more, functional. So
Paco Underhill, author of Why We Buy, seminal work, just came out with a new book called How We Eat. And most of the book is about supermarkets. Opening chapter is tearing into how bad parking lots are at supermarkets. Like, wow. He takes no prisoners. It's like, we need to rethink parking lots at supermarkets completely.
I did and also just there's a pretty, in the urban planning world, and I think his name it's Professor Shoup, who wrote The High Cost of Free Parking. Again, this is not a parking show, but it's really fascinating on just what it is essentially cost us to have free parking, and then it is just terrible for the environment, terrible for our, how you get around. And I just want to say real quick that we have a conflicting view.
That's what I said, Nino.
That
Park
is
at Galleria, shop at Americana.
I just personally disagree. I like to go up on the side. I don't want to go through the lanes, but if you've got a spot, all the power to you.
He has a spot and he's not telling anybody. That's like, if you know a good shortcut, you don't let anybody know.
Yeah, you're like, absolutely. Oh, I was stuck in that too. Funny.
All right. Well, just to sum up this thing about Amazon, so many announcements coming all over the place from Amazon. And just within the physical store strategy, I'll just say both stores require an app. Both stores assume you as a shopper don't want to have human guidance or much human interaction. That's just sort of the way that Amazon's going. And I think that there may be some opportunity for them to gain some market share with that.
Absolutely. I think this is, kind of huge, right? For a couple of reasons. Number one, Taylor mentioned they're taking the space of a former big box retailer that closed down. So perhaps this could be, one of the new tenants that does that for shopping centers all across the country. Number two, it's large, right? 30,000 square feet is pretty big for selling clothes for any retailer. So that is very encouraging as well. And then I think, lastly, it's so encouraging that they, because I think for a long time, the conversation has been, physical retail has kind of depended on the fact that we can't recreate the in-store experience at home, right? And so for a tech company like this to be like, we're not even going to try, we're just going to go and try to make a super high-tech Kohl's. I feel like that is really, really encouraging for, physical retail going forward. And, this is, you described the Americana as a lifestyle center, Taylor. I'm not very familiar with it, but this seems like the sort of, based on the co-tenancy, a retailer that might go into malls, right? And so this could invigorate a lot of the malls around us. And, I think this could be a really good sign for, physical retail going forward.
Awesome. Love it. Well, are y'all ready for a little bit of a retail challenge?
Always.
All right. It's time for the retail challenge. We're going to do 3 questions, 1 point per question. The winner after most points after 3 questions wins. If you're watching along live on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can feel free to type in your question answer in the comments. If you're the first one to get the correct answer in the chat, you will win the eternal admiration of your peers. This week, I'm the quiz master. Ebere and Taylor are the challengers. Ebere, you've been tearing it up on Retail Challenge, right? You've been winning a lot of these.
Kind of what I do. Would you say that's LeBron when it comes to basketball? He does.
So Ebere is the LeBron of Retail Challenge. Taylor is the I don't know, the young up and comer.
Sure.
I don't know enough sports references to come up with another one, so we'll leave it at that.
Naomi Osaka. She's the Naomi Osaka.
Ooh. I feel
Sounds
like
good.
that's giving me a lot more credit than I deserve, but thank you.
All right, so Retail Challenge. Today we talked about esports, so this is going to be a little bit of an esports theme. So here's our first question. When was the first video game created? Was it in 1940, 1958, or 1970? Taylor, I'll let you go first.
1958.
1958. Ebere, what do you think?
I'm going to go 1940.
1940. The correct answer is 1958.
Yes.
Physicist William Higginbotham created a tennis game that was very similar to the 70s game Pong.
So that Pong was what I was thinking of, and I was like, there's got to have been some like real early version that I'm just unfamiliar with, but that someone did it in some lab, someplace.
Of course.
Right. Yeah, so Pong was the first at-home game you could buy, but 1958, a tennis game from William Higginbotham. All right, well, 1 point to Taylor.
What would we do without him?
1 point to Taylor, 1 point to Ebere. I see an upset.
I don't have a point.
Oh, I'm sorry. 0 points to Ebere.
Whoa.
I have integrity. Okay, listen.
Fire the ref.
I see an upset on the horizon. So here's our second question. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, where is the largest arcade in the world? Is it in New Hampshire, Tokyo, or London? Taylor, since you won the last round, we'll have you go first. We'll put the pressure on you.
I love the idea that it could be in New Hampshire, but I'm going to go with B, Tokyo.
Taylor's going with Tokyo. Ebere, what do you think?
I feel like New Hampshire is like trying to throw me off, but I'm going to go with Tokyo as well. B.
All right. Well, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest arcade in the world is at Fun Spot in Weirs Beach, New Hampshire.
I knew it.
No way.
Fun Spot has 581 games over 3 floors. They also have a classic arcade museum, which has games like Pong. So if you wanted to see that original Pong, go to Fun Spot in Weirs Beach and check it out.
I feel like this is just because like the Tokyo arcade just like we're not applying for the Guinness Book of World Records. We don't need this. So
it could Taylor, you could be right. You could be right. Also want to say something else that I threw this together at the last minute. That was according to the 2017 Guinness Book of World Records.
5 years, James. Come on.
I know.
A lot has changed.
So I just to be clear, I don't play fast and loose with the facts when it comes to the retail research. But sometimes when I'm throwing together a retail challenge 10 minutes before the show starts, I don't have time to dig too deeply. But if anybody's been to Fun Spot, I would love to learn more.
I would also like to learn more.
Yeah.
So Henry talked about events and like how important events are to esports. So the League of Legends mid-season 2018 Invitational had the biggest audience of any esports event in history. So in person, not a ton of people. There were 7,000 people in the live audience in person, but there were a lot more watching live online. How many people were watching live online? 20 million, 60 million, or 100 million people watching League of Legends? Ebere, what do you think?
Okay. I'm gonna say I really was like trying to do some like quick math in my head. Like, how many million Americans are there? I'm gonna say 100 million because League of Legends is a big game. So I'm sure
Very big game.
it was
Yeah.
all over the world. People were tuning in from. So but that's a lot. Okay, what? 100 million. I'm just gonna say it.
All right, Taylor, what do you think?
20 million.
Well, the actual answer is 60 million.
Hmm.
So you're both wrong.
Yay.
Almost went for that one because it was the happy medium, but I was like watching live. I don't know.
So there were
Yeah.
60 million viewers.
That's
they watched.
insane.
That's a lot
They
of people.
watched over 2 billion hours of total viewing time. That's 2 billion hours with a B. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Okay, I lost track. Who won?
Taylor.
Wait a
No.
minute.
I got 0. I didn't get
Oh,
anywhere.
I did win.
Taylor, you're a winner. Congratulations. It's a real turning point. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but they also just had a big upset on Jeopardy. The woman who
really?
won like 40 games in a row, she just lost
Oh,
yesterday.
Oh.
Listen,
Um,
even the
but-
champs lose sometimes. It's okay.
I know, but it was a
Congrats, Taylor.
huge run.
Take the crown off. Put it on you.
So, Taylor, yeah, we need crowns. That's it. Or we need hats that say winner or something. I don't know. But congratulations, Taylor, for winning the retail challenge. So guys, really interesting. I don't know if you saw this in the news today, but Leap, the retail platform Leap, just announced they had a Series B round of another $50 million. Total coincidence. Last night, I was talking with Rebecca Fitz, who's the head of real estate at Leap, getting a little bit of the inside scoop before it was officially announced. Also had a chance to catch up with Gabrielle Litch, who's the head of digital native leasing at Macerich. Talked about Leap's growth plans, what Macerich is doing around attracting digital natives to their malls. Recorded the conversation, and you can hear it by listening to the Where We Buy podcast. Episode not out yet, dropping tomorrow. Today's Thursday, dropping tomorrow. Go subscribe at wherewebuy.show, where you can also listen online, or pull up Where We Buy on whatever podcast app you like to use.
Absolutely. And you can also be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and click on the little bell icon so that you are notified when new shows come out each week.
Or you can follow the JLL retail page on LinkedIn. We will be back next week. New episode next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find that on everythingweknow.show or on what I just mentioned, the JLL retail LinkedIn page.
Absolutely. Okay, so Taylor, tell us the first esports stadium. Where is it going to be? I know you have to know.
Oh, Ebere, we'll talk about all of it next week.